of our second OIS at ASRS, and I'm pleased to be joined by our co-chairs. We mix it up a little bit. We've got Emmett Cunningham, of course, co-chair of OIS, with our two clinical co-chairs, Mark Humayun and John Pollack. Thank you for all your work on this event, gentlemen. What was your sense overall of the day?
I was happy with it. I thought it's a second great event, good partnership, ASRS, OIS. I was so very happy and proud. How about you all?
Yeah, I think this is a great addition to the ASRS, having it prior to the meeting. I think that physicians want access to early stage companies and data that's coming through, and this is a great forum for us to gain access to that information.
Yeah, very, very complimentary. Got a lot of great input from people who attended, so I'm glad we're doing it, and I think it's a pretty big success. Even though it's the second one, it's already off to a great start.
That's a great second start, and it's really noisy in here, so it's a lot of activity. But we opened up with some company presentations, both public and private. Private companies, we had a lot of early stage companies, and I'm usually stuck here with 3 VCs, so they have a different perspective than the MDs. I'm curious, how do you folks view the really early stage companies? With excitement, with, call me in a year or two when you've got some more data? What was your sense of the presentations this morning?
Well, I love early stage companies. I love research and development. I split my time 50% seeing patients, 50% really working in early stage technology. So it's really a breath of fresh air. I mean, it's really tough from an investment standpoint. Emmett can talk to invest so early on when there isn't really proof of concept. Maybe there's just a proof of principle, but I really enjoy them. And I hope there's a venue to have more of them in ophthalmology because some of them are definitely going to hit.
John, are you encouraged by what you see coming down the pipe?
I am. I think that things are changing. We're looking at how much vision can we gain, and there's a little bit less talk about that, and more talk about how long can we maintain those vision gains we have. And I suspect that after we establish durability in the 6 month, maybe longer range, then we'll start talking about vision gains again. So this is moving in a very exciting direction.
Terrific. And Emmett, you made a point of trying to get earlier stage companies up there. It's a priority of ours.
Yes, well, for 2 reasons. First, people have asked for it, so they've asked for new and earlier stage companies. And second, because there's no late without early. And so we have to look and try to see the most promising, most exciting companies, and we try to help put those companies on stage. Sometimes it's hard to get at the very earliest, those that aren't quite formed yet. They either don't know about OIS or they're not ready to come out and give a formal type presentation. But we hope to have more of that.
That's terrific. And we had a session with improved clinical imaging, improved trials versus through improved imaging. Some really interesting technologies there, some advances. I had a chance to speak with Francesca Cordero about their technology at the Imperial College. What was your takeaway from that session, Emmett? I don't know if you physicians you got a chance to see that as well.
I'll start. I wanted that session. I pushed for that session. Francesca's work, I think, is really exciting, and it's a cell that's dead or not is clearly an important endpoint that we believe we can translate into meaningful functional endpoints. How many cells have to die is a different thing, but knowing whether they're dying is, I think, useful. When you get to secondary measures that are OCT-based, angiography-based, it's perhaps not as direct a connection intuitively. But again, I think with time and validation, we'll see that those endpoints will play out too. And it's all directed at easier trials, less costly, less time-consuming trials, which is what we need. The cost of developing drugs, the failure rate, they're just both way too high to make it a sort of rapid cycle process, which it needs to be.
Any sense from you?
Well, I think when you tie a diagnostic to an endpoint like Emmett was talking about, it becomes very, very critical. I would say, the OCT sort of went hand in hand with anti-VEGFs. If we could just look at edema on OCT, but we couldn't do anything about it using an anti-VEGF drug, then perhaps it wouldn't have taken off as well. But really, it's that hand in hand, the imaging really providing endpoint parameters and guidance for therapy. That's really exciting. So we hope more of these imaging programs really come to fruition in that way.
We followed with the seed stage financing panel, which I thought presented a lot of really useful information. John, I know encouraging retina specialists to be innovative is a priority of yours. What did you take away from that panel? And what is your sense of the availability for capital and for advice for physicians who want to be innovative?
Well, unfortunately, I was out of the room for that session, so I can't comment on that.
So it was fantastic, is what he's saying.
We'll get you back up on that.
But yes, I think that there's actually a very large demand for guidance from physicians at a very, very early stage. Physicians that have ideas, that sometimes are terrific ideas, but they don't have the wherewithal, the knowledge to get their idea to the point where they would come to OIS and actually present at OIS. So there's a large gap, an unmet need for that time period. And I think that's something that I'd like to get ASRS to get a little bit more involved in providing opportunities for physicians to have access to experts like Emmett and others that can help kind of encourage and accelerate innovation led by physicians.
So you have a very innovative course on Sunday. Tell the audience about that, what you're doing, when you're doing it, and what you hope to get out of it.
Well, this is called the Winning Pitch Challenge, and it's sort of a retina Shark Tank. And the idea here again is to elicit ideas from members of the ASRS and allow them to pitch to a panel of judges. This year, Emmett and Bill Link and Gene Dewan and others are involved in this. And we had 17 submissions. We have 4 finalists, and this will provide everyone, including those that submit but don't pass on to the final stage, to provide feedback. There's a mentor program to help them develop their pitches, and throughout the year there's access to information and guidance on how to move your idea forward and develop it to a point where you can decide, is this something worth moving forward and building a team around or not?
And we followed up with the presentation of Mark Blumenkrantz, speaking of innovation, and gave him the OIS Lifetime Innovator Award, which is, Emma, you noted it's probably about halfway through a lifetime, which is maybe a little premature, but it was a great conversation you had with him, and I thought, any takeaways from Mark's conversation with you that would be helpful to other innovative physicians out there?
Again, I'll start. We all have these heroes in medicine and ophthalmology who've done so many and so much of the things we hope and would like to do. I always take away from that a lot more is possible than perhaps we think or understand. I always say to younger physicians that, if you're smart enough to get here, then doing's not the problem, it's deciding. And if you decide to take the chance, you decide to make the move, often it'll work out one way or another. And regardless, you won't know that it didn't. So take the chance and do what your heart tells you to do. And so that's what I get out of the people I've met who are so hugely successful. They multitask across multiple areas, and they're usually successful at many of them because they take that chance.
And Mark, how about you? You've obviously had some success of your own on the innovation front.
Yes, I mean, it's great to have Mark Blumenkrantz as the winner this year. He's really represents someone who has been in academics, somebody who's went to private practice, came back into academia, and was really able to develop these fantastic things. And as Emmett pointed out, it was really the breadth of his inventions. They're not just instruments, they're not just gene therapy, they're just not just one faceted, single faceted invention. So it was great to see him, and it was really well deserved and well recognized for all the work that he's done.
And in the afternoon, you moderated a panel on combination therapy, which was really excellent. What was anything you walked away with from that? I thought there were a few interesting comments about insurers and the cost of combination therapy, how that might play out. What was your takeaway from that session?
Well, the combination therapy session was really good. I think it's very timely. How do we improve on what we do have with the anti-VEGF drugs? How can we make things better, but yet to do it in a way that makes sense for our patients and makes sense for third-party payers. So the discussion was really around that. We brought in, some science issues. Do you co-formulate this? Do you do it through a different mechanism? Do you give it sequentially or simultaneously? So we addressed some of the scientific issues, as well as, if you were to do it 2 drugs apart and they're 3 weeks apart, how would a third-party payer view that, and how would they pay for 2 very expensive drugs? So these are all challenges that we will be seeing, but these are something that we look forward to. I mean, if we can end up improving the vision in our patients and really making a difference, I think we should be looking forward to solving these problems. Ultimately, the bottom line is the vision for our patients, so we have to do everything to strive towards that.
And ASRS is going to undertake a campaign to sort of help determine the value of this, correct?
Yeah, so I've been involved with that with Praveen and others. Basically, we're fortunate to have the Schaefer Institute, Public Health Policy at USC. They were actually before that at RAND, a very well-known organization, and they're looking at exactly what's the value of vision. You take these very expensive drugs at the end of it, they lengthen somebody's life by 3 months or 6 months. End-stage cancer, they're valued one thing, and of course, if anyone of us had end-stage cancer, we'd want to live 3 or 6 months more. But then, how does that compare to, vision for a decade or vision for 2 decades in diabetics? So those are the kind of things we're looking at. We're also looking beyond just vision quality. Qualities are things that have looked at vision, but this is like going beyond that and saying how it influences their life holistically. And these people are really the expert, and we're doing that through the ASRS. We'll have preliminary data here to present in the next few months, and then we'll build on that. And then you can actually build on that structure and answer the question, well, if there was another drug that was added that gave you another line or a half a line, or it did X, Y, Z in a patient's life, like somebody said, maybe allow them to drive or whatever, what does that mean? So this is a very important study, something I've been wanting to do, and we're able to do it through the ASRS, and we're going to keep you posted, and hopefully good things come out of it.
That sounds ambitious.
I just wanted to make a comment on the combination panel, which I didn't get to say, obviously, because I wasn't on the panel, but protocols are not patients, but we do protocols to get approval. And what we've learned for most drugs, which tend to have normal dose responses, that is more drug, better response, if you follow the protocol, you get a better response. And as you step away from the protocol, you don't get as good of a response. And the same is probably true for combinations. Now, the great danger, of course, is that when you start introducing more and more drugs, the potential for therapeutic flexibility increases sort of geometrically, if not exponentially, because you have all these different potential combinations. And one of my concerns, there are several concerns. One concern is how are payers going to respond? Do you have to do exactly what you did in the trial? The second concern is how are patients going to respond? Are they going to lose efficacy because people will do 3 months of VEGF and 2 months of Ang2 and sort of mix and match and just start losing efficacy? I think what all that's going to translate into, both because the insurers will demand it and the patients deserve it, is that we're going to see a lot more trials. So the DRCR, for example, or its equivalent for AMD, hugely important, and people are going to be very busy studying all different permutations, my guess.
Yeah. And John, you had followed up with you led the retinal drug delivery panel, correct? That is some ambitious stuff there as well. What was your takeaway from that session?
Well, yeah, I think again it just demonstrating how exciting a time it really is. We have multiple candidates for outstanding sustained delivery at slightly different stages of development. But I think that in the next several years we're going to go from not having many opportunities at all for sustained delivery, other than what the innate ability of the patient's eye are with these drugs that were approved for monthly or every other month, to multiple potential treatments. And so now we'll have to be deciding which long-term treatment to use and why.
I mean, any thought on the drug delivery panel?
On the what?
Thoughts on the drug delivery panel, or?
It's one of the, it's there, it was there because it's one of the core issues of our subfield. So delivery to me, compliance in particular, is the next major endpoint. And I think it should be. The FDA is not quite there yet because they want you to demonstrate the difference in efficacy, but I think we will get there. Payers are the next step because they're going to want demonstrated functional outcome differences for improved compliance. But I think it's super important, and there are lots of companies going after it.
And what was the general feeling about the gene therapy area? It's obviously very exciting, very promising, very ambitious. The gene therapy area. What is it?
I think that's the future, right? I think that we talked for 20 years about this, and we're sort of treading water. We're progressing very, very slowly. I think that in the last several years, I think it's been demonstrated that gene therapy is going to be used, and we have better technologies for editing and things like that make it seem like really in the next 5 to 10 years we're going to have multiple potential candidates out there. And the question is just how customized will you be able to make it?
Mark?
Well, yeah, I think with CRISPR-Cas, 9 coming into play here with gene editing capability, we'll see what happens. It's a challenge. It's hard to pack in some of the regular viral vector type deliveries. It's a challenge to do it in patients in the eye. But that kind of technology, that kind of tool is very exciting because you can truly edit a gene. And so we'll see what comes of it. It's an exciting area.
Excellent. And finally, Gil Kleiman wasn't able to join us, but he led the corporate retina panel, which is kind of the sort of our masters panel. But we've sort of talked to another tier of leader here. Any takeaways from that session, Emmett, that you saw?
Well, maybe I was happy to see that the space remains so active, that there are major companies with major resources that are still pursuing retinal indications, ophthalmic indications. So that's all very promising. I think if I were going to give a last word, I would say this year, between this ASRS and next ASRS, is hugely important. We'll know if combination therapy has a leg to stand on because we have multiple readouts. We'll know if complement in AMD has a leg to stand on because we'll have an important readout. We'll know if sustained release of proteins has a leg to stand out because Genentech has a major readout. And we'll have a better feeling about how sort of applicable gene therapy is because, again, multiple companies are reading out. So these next 12 months in retina in particular are hugely important. Negative trials are never good. Having multiple negative trials will be particularly not good, but let's hope that none or few are negative.
That's a good way to end a conversation. I know that Healthagy and that OIS, we've really enjoyed working with ASRS, and I definitely look forward to having a bigger crowd behind us next year. So thank you all for your work.
Thank you both for
Thank you.
partnering. Thank you.